Let me tell you something that happened to me about 8 months ago. I was sitting across from a guy, let's call him Daniel, in a coffee shop in Austin, Texas. Daniel is 44 years old. He has a net worth of around $4 million. He built 3 companies from scratch, sold 2 of them, and right now he spends most of his mornings playing golf. And I asked him a question that I had been asking everyone I interviewed for this project. I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, "What is the one thing you did differently than everyone else?" He paused. He looked down at his coffee. And then he said something that genuinely made me uncomfortable. He said, and I'm quoting him almost word for word here, "I learned to make my problems someone else's problems as fast as humanly possible." I laughed. I thought he was joking. He wasn't laughing. And the more I sat with that answer, the more I realized every single person I had interviewed over the past 6 months had told me some version of the exact same thing. A nurse from Ohio who built a real estate portfolio worth $4 million. A former school teacher from Georgia who now runs a 7-figure online business. A 38-year-old guy from New Jersey who retired last year after building a logistics company. All of them, the same pattern. Hidden underneath different words, different stories, different industries, but the exact same behavior at the core. And here's the part that got to me. When I pointed this out to them, when I said, "Hey, do you realize this is what you're doing?" Almost all of them got uncomfortable. Some of them pushed back. A few of them tried to reframe it to sound nicer. Because this trait, it doesn't look pretty from the outside. It's not the kind of thing you put on a motivational poster. It's not what finance gurus talk about in their courses. But it is, based on everything I found, the single most consistent behavior that separates people who build real wealth from people who stay stuck. So today, I'm going to show you exactly what it is, why it works, why most people will never do it, and most importantly, how you can actually apply this, even if you have 0 extra money right now. Section 1. Why I started this project. About a year ago, I hit a wall. I had been making decent money. Not rich by any stretch, but comfortable. I was doing okay. And for some reason, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get to the next level. I was reading books, listening to podcasts, watching videos, all the stuff you're supposed to do, and nothing was clicking. And I started to get genuinely frustrated because I kept hearing the same advice over and over. Work harder, wake up earlier, be more disciplined, save 20% of your income, invest in index funds. And look, that advice isn't wrong, but it felt incomplete, like someone handing you a recipe and leaving out one of the ingredients. So I decided to do something kind of obsessive. I decided to go directly to the source. Over the course of 6 months, I reached out to, interviewed, or closely studied 100 people with a verified net worth of at least $1 million. Some of them I interviewed personally, one-on-one. Others I studied through long-form interviews, biographies, court documents, business records, anything I could get my hands on. I was specifically looking for people who were self-made, not people who inherited money, not people who won the lottery or married into wealth. People who started from a normal or difficult financial situation and built something real. And I went in with 0 agenda. I genuinely did not know what I was going to find. I had hypotheses, discipline, risk tolerance, early investing, but I kept an open mind. What I found completely rewired how I think about money. Section 2. Destroying the obvious answers. Before I tell you what the real pattern was, I need to walk you through what it wasn't. Because I guarantee you, right now, your brain is already guessing, and I want to clear the table before we get to the main course. Guess number 1, discipline. This is the big one, the one everyone defaults to. And yes, every person I studied had some version of discipline in their life. But here's the problem with that answer. I also know plenty of incredibly disciplined people who are completely broke. People who wake up at 5 a.m. every day, who track every dollar, who never miss a workout, and who are still living paycheck to paycheck 15 years into their career. Discipline is necessary. it is not sufficient. It's a tool, not a strategy. So we can cross that one off. Guess number 2, intelligence or education. I thought this might show up strongly. It didn't. The educational backgrounds in my group of 100 were all over the place. I had people with MBAs from Ivy League schools. I also had people who dropped out of high school. I had engineers, lawyers, former nurses, former waiters, a guy who used to lay carpet for a living. If anything, I noticed that some of the most formally educated people in my group were also the most financially stuck for the longest period of time, because they were trained to optimize for salary, not for wealth. Guess number 3, risk tolerance. A lot of people assume millionaires are just naturally comfortable with risk, that they're wired differently, that they don't feel fear the same way normal people do. That is completely false. Almost every person I interviewed talked about being terrified at some point, scared of losing everything, scared of making the wrong move. Several of them described moments where they couldn't sleep, where they were sick with anxiety, where they genuinely did not know if they were going to make it. The difference wasn't that they felt less fear. The difference was something else entirely. Guess number 4, timing and luck. Okay, I'll be honest with you here. Luck is real. Being in the right place at the right time is real. Market conditions matter. Economic cycles matter. But here's what I kept seeing. The people in my study consistently put themselves in positions where luck could find them. They weren't just sitting and waiting for the right moment. They were creating so many at-bats that eventually something had to connect. And the way they created those at-bats, that goes back to the core behavior I'm about to explain.
Section 3. The real pattern. Here is what I kept seeing across every category of millionaire in my study. They were obsessive, almost pathological, about identifying which problems in their life required their specific brain, their specific skills, their specific presence, and everything else, they got it off their plate as fast as possible. Now, before you say, oh, that's just delegation, hold on. Because this goes much deeper than what most people mean when they talk about delegation. This is a complete philosophical shift in how you see your time and your energy. Let me give you a concrete example. Early in his career, before he had any real money, one of the entrepreneurs I interviewed was working 70-hour weeks running his small business. He was doing the bookkeeping, the customer service emails, the social media, the sales calls, the product development, everything. And he told me the moment everything changed. He was sitting at his desk at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday doing data entry, and he thought to himself, is there anything about this task that requires me specifically to do it? Or am I just doing it because I'm scared to let go? The answer was obvious. Anyone could do data entry. So he hired a part-time bookkeeper for $400 a month.
And the 15 hours a week he got back from that, he put directly into sales, which was the one thing that actually moved the needle in his business. Within 90 days, his revenue had grown enough to make that $400 look like a rounding error. That's the mechanism. That's how this works. But here's the layer that most people miss. This behavior, this obsession with offloading anything that doesn't require your unique value, it doesn't just apply to work tasks. The people in my study applied it to everything. They outsourced their meal prep. They hired people to clean their homes, not because they were lazy, but because a Saturday morning spent grocery shopping and cleaning was a Saturday morning not spent doing something that could compound financially. They paid for premium services, faster shipping, better tools, higher quality software, because they understood that friction costs time, and time costs money. One woman I interviewed, a former middle school teacher who built a $4 million real estate portfolio over 12 years, told me something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said, every time I'm about to spend an hour doing something I find tedious, I ask myself, what would I have to believe about my own time to think this is the best use of it right now? That question fundamentally changed how she allocated her energy, and it fundamentally changed her financial trajectory.
Section 4. Why this shows up differently in each category. Now I want to show you how this pattern looked across the 4 different categories of millionaires I studied, because it wasn't identical in every group, and I think seeing the variations makes it even more convincing.
Category 1, the entrepreneurs. For the business builders in my study, this behavior showed up earliest and most aggressively. Almost all of them described a specific turning point, a moment where they stopped trying to do everything themselves and started thinking like a CEO of their own time. Interestingly, the ones who made this shift earliest grew the fastest. The ones who held on to control the longest, who struggled to trust other people with tasks, consistently described longer, harder roads to their first million. The pattern was almost mathematical. The faster they could remove themselves from low-leverage tasks, the faster their businesses scaled. Category 2, the investors. This one surprised me a little. You might assume that investors, especially real estate investors or stock market investors, are kind of lone wolves, people who do their own research, make their own decisions, trust no one. Some of them were like that early on, but the successful ones, the ones who built real lasting portfolios, almost all moved towards systems that ran without their constant attention. They built or bought into property management structures. They used financial advisors, not to outsource their thinking, but to free up mental bandwidth. They automated everything that could be automated. One investor I studied had a rule. If a financial task was taking him more than 30 minutes per week and could be systematized, he would spend whatever time and money it took to systematize it. He said the mental clarity he gained from not having to think about those things was worth more than the cost.
Category 3, the corporate climbers. I want to be clear, I was not focused on people who just had high salaries, but I did include some high-earning corporate professionals who had built genuine wealth through smart behavior over time. And even here, the pattern showed up, just in a different form. The people in this category who built real wealth were obsessive about being seen doing the highest leverage work possible at all times. They delegated internally, they said no to projects that didn't move their career forward. They protected their reputation for solving hard problems, because that reputation was their asset. They were essentially doing the same thing as the entrepreneurs, identifying their unique value and ruthlessly protecting access to it. Category 4, the reluctant millionaires. This was the most interesting group to me. These were people who didn't necessarily set out to become millionaires. They just made a series of smart decisions over a long period of time and ended up there. What was fascinating about this group is that the behavior was often unconscious. They hadn't read a book about leverage or time management. They had just intuitively avoided taking on tasks and responsibilities that didn't serve them. They said no a lot. They kept their lives simple. They didn't volunteer for extra complexity. And that simplicity, that protection of their bandwidth, allowed them to stay consistent for decades. Which, in investing in wealth building, consistency over decades is everything.
Section 5, the dark side, and why most people won't do this. I want to be completely honest with you here, because I think if I just gave you the highlight reel, I'd be doing you a disservice. This behavior, this obsession with offloading, delegating, and protecting your highest value time, it has a dark side. And it's the reason some of the people I interviewed got uncomfortable when I named it out loud. Because taken to an extreme, this mindset can make you a difficult person to be around. Some of the entrepreneurs I spoke with described strained relationships with employees, with partners, with family members, because they had applied this logic too broadly. They had treated human relationships like optimization problems. That's not what I'm advocating. And to be fair, the healthiest and most fulfilled people in my study had drawn a clear line between their professional approach to time and their personal life. They were ruthless with their schedule at work and intentionally present at home. But I think it's important you know that this is a sharp tool, and sharp tools can cut in the wrong direction if you're not paying attention. The other reason most people won't do this, and this is the psychological piece that I find the most interesting, is that letting go of tasks feels like losing control. It feels irresponsible. It feels like you're admitting you can't handle everything. We are conditioned, especially in American culture, to equate busyness with value. If you're busy, you must be important. If you're doing everything yourself, you must be hardworking. If you need help, something must be wrong with you. That conditioning is financially devastating. The people who build real wealth do the opposite. They treat their need for help as a feature, not a bug. They actively look for things to hand off. They feel successful when they've successfully removed themselves from something, not when they've successfully completed it themselves. That mental flip from "I need to do this" to "who or what can do this better than me" is genuinely one of the hardest psychological shifts I've ever tried to make personally. And I'm still working on it. I won't pretend I've mastered this. But even applying it 30 or 40% more than I was a year ago has changed things for me in ways I didn't expect. Section 6. How to apply this with zero extra money. So here's the question I know you're sitting with right now. That all sounds great, but I don't have money to hire people. I can't outsource my groceries. I'm not in a position to delegate anything. I hear you, and I want to be very direct with you. The financial version of this, the paying people to do things, that comes later. That's the output, not the starting point. The starting point is purely mental, and it costs nothing. Here is the exercise I want you to try this week. Just 1 week. Write down every single thing you spend time on. Every task, errand, every meeting, every obligation. Get it all on paper. Then go through that list and put each item into one of 2 columns. Column A, things that use skills, knowledge, or relationships that only I have. Column B, everything else. I promise you, if you're honest with yourself, column B is going to be longer than you expect. Way longer.
You're not going to outsource all of that overnight. But here's what you can do right now. You can stop volunteering for column B items. You can start saying no. You can start looking for the lowest cost way to get column B tasks done, whether that's a cheaper service, a tool, an app, or just simply doing less of that thing. And every hour you claw back from column B, you put it into column A, into the things that actually build your financial future. Building skills, building relationships, building assets, building something that compounds. That's where wealth comes from. Not from being the person who does the most, from being the person who does the right things and is relentless about protecting that space. One of the people I interviewed put it in a way that stuck with me. He said, "I'm not trying to be the hardest worker in the room. I'm trying to be the person in the room whose hours are worth the most." That's the game. And it's a game anyone can start playing. Right now, today, with exactly the resources you currently have.